what prevents us from moving forward is very often not at all the things that we try to solve for.
Hi, y'all. You're listening to Optimal Instinct with Trish, and I am Trish Tagley,
a business efficiency expert who uses a one-day summit to get your clients to stay longer, pay more, and refer often. Today, our guest is Peter Bregman, a sought-after speaker and thought leader in the areas of leadership development, organizational change, productivity, and emotional courage. He is the host of the Bregman Leadership Podcast, which offers insightful conversation with the industry thought leaders on how to become more powerful and courageous. He is also a regular contributor to the Harvard Business Review, and his articles and commentary appear frequently in Bloomberg BusinessWeek, Fast Company, Psychology Today, Forbes, the Financial Times, PBS, ABC, CNN, NPR, and Fox Business News. Pretty impressive, Peter. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm really good. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about what is the problem that you solve?
So, it's a great question because I'm a consultant at heart. And so in some ways, I solve whatever problem you have, which is, it's certainly in the realm of leadership and in the realm of our behavior and how we show up. But if I pause and think bigger picture, like what truly is the problem I solve, I'm going to go specific on you and then a little esoteric on you.
Sure.
Which is, I solve the problem of procrastination in a sense, right? I solve the problem that we don't often get traction on our most important work. And the stuff that's closest to us, is most important to us, we often run into obstacles that prevent us from following through. A lot of times we can look at these external obstacles, but the truth is, and this is whether I'm working with, individuals, small companies, or massive global organizations, that what prevents us from moving forward is very often not at all the things that we try to solve for. Let's do a thought experiment.
Sure.
Think of a difficult conversation you're not having. Okay, so a conversation you should have, but you're not having. All right, when you have one in mind, you have one in mind?
Yes.
Great. I'm not going to make you say it out loud. But here's the thing. Consider why you're not having it. I'm willing to bet you know everything you need to know to have this conversation.
Yes.
I'm willing to bet you're perfectly skilled enough to have the conversation.
Yes.
And I bet you've had time and opportunity to have the conversation. And so and that's usually what we solve for. I've written a book on managing time. I write, right, which is about knowledge. And I write about like how to develop skills. And I run leadership programs, which is about skills. So we almost always try to solve for knowledge, skill, time, or opportunity. That's what we try to solve for in terms of moving forward. But that's not what stops us from moving forward. What stops us from moving forward is there's something we don't want to feel. So if you have that difficult conversation, you're going to have to feel stuff. You might have to feel conflict or disconnection or the other person's dissatisfaction or their anger. You might have to feel them coming back at you and then you get defensive and you might have to be accountable and you might have to feel that. You might have to feel shame or embarrassment or the weird passive aggressiveness that comes after a difficult conversation and the person like smiles and says, thanks so much, that was really great, but then gets all weird on you afterwards. You might have to feel that stuff. And because you don't want to feel that stuff, then you don't move forward on what's most important for you to move forward on. And if we are willing to feel everything, and this is the core of my book, Leading with Emotional Courage, if we are willing to feel everything, if we're willing to feel shame and embarrassment, if we're willing to feel anger and conflict and disconnection, if we're willing to feel everything, then we can do anything.
Optimal Instinct with Trish is brought to you by TrishTagley.com and the book Everyone Knows You Suck, Bad Boss Stories, A Succinct Guide, available now in both ebook and print format on Amazon.com. And the C's Value Model that supports your desire for client relationships that are more profitable, more productive, and more likely to refer. To understand more about the C's model, go to clientvaluedemo.com.
in a lot of ways, what I solve for is our lack of willingness to feel. What are we not willing to feel so that we can move forward and take action in the work that's most important to us?
The next question would have been, what are the common mistakes? But you answered that, is the lack of willingness to feel. Now, let me pose this in a different way then, okay?
Sure.
So I'm the type of person that if there's something that I love having difficult conversations, okay?
Right.
I am willing to put my head on the chopping block if need be. But in my career in corporate, the outcome wasn't always what I, like I said, it gets odd. What would be the advice for me on, like, okay, now you have this oddness between you and the person you had the difficult conversation with. What's the solve for that?
That's a great question. And yes, there are tons of skills necessary to have effective conversations. So I think it's really important to learn those skills. Like we're just talking about this, we were talking before the show that I'm running a workshop, a week-long workshop with a very good friend of mine on emotional courage in relationships. And the challenge is twofold. One is, how can I be skillful in that conversation? But before we even have to worry about that, we have to say, how can I be willing to have that conversation? And that conversation, especially with someone we're in an ongoing relationship with, and it could be, when I think about the workshop, we're doing something very deliberate, which is that we're opening it to people who are, married or partnered or spouses or connected. And we're also wanting people who are business partners or even possibly a manager and employee or customer and an owner or a parent and a daughter. Like, all kinds of relationships require that we show up fully and be willing to feel things in order to really be real. That's how you create quality relationships. And it's very scary to do. And so if we're willing to feel everything, we can do anything. And yes, it really helps to have skills. So one of the mistakes people make is when they have to have a hard conversation, they think it's about them talking. But 90% of the time, when you have to have a hard conversation, you should be spending 80% of your time listening if you want it to go well. And how to do that is very hard. It's really hard to listen, right?
Yes.
Listening requires more emotional courage than speaking, right? If you're going to listen, you're going to hear stuff you don't particularly want to hear.
Yep.
But if you talk, maybe you could avoid hearing that stuff.
So that's fantastic. Yeah.
So yes, absolutely, we need the skill, and emotional courage comes with us every step of the way. And I'll just share one more thing, which is that I sort of said I'm going to go existential on you a little bit. Because when I really think, and now this is the first time I've ever really said this publicly.
I'm getting an exclusive.
This is exclusive. You heard it here first. And this may make me sound a little woo-woo. Recognize that I'm saying this, and I work with the most senior, most successful CEOs in the largest organizations.
Absolutely.
I believe that we come into the world, and we're right now in the world with deep things we want to accomplish that I would even call soul. Like there's something our soul, there's a longing that our souls have. Like, we have longing. And whether or not you're comfortable with the language is actually doesn't matter either way.
Yeah, right.
But we have these deep longings, and we are doing a ton of things that get in the way of following that longing. There's a million reasons why we prevent ourselves. There's a bunch of gook and complexity and complication between we worry about money or we worry about relations. We get ourselves caught up in that stuff, and it stops. So I can't tell you how many people start a business, because there's a lot of people here, I guess, who run businesses, who start a business, and 10 years down the line, all of the reasons they started the business, they're not reaping the benefits of any of that. They're overwhelmed and they're overworked, and there's so many things that we do. And so when I really think, like, this is between you and me, right? When I really think, like, what is the problem I'm trying to solve in the world? I'm trying to solve the problem of how we get in the way of what we most want and how we can remove those obstacles that prevent us from stepping into our lives as fully as we really want to step into our lives. And I happen to do it in a business context with business people for the most part, because that's what I know. I also do it with people in interfaith relationships because I kind of know that too. And I do it in lots of different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, just to reiterate to the audience, is a lot of times when you go in to have these conversations, you're talking because you don't want to hear. So are you really being emotionally courageous by continuing to talk instead of listen?
Right.
That is a fantastic reflection point that I'm going to go back and think on, see, where do I stand on that? But let's get to the last question. I know you're a busy man. So what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Gosh, I think we covered a lot of really important things. I think maybe the final thing I'll say is, if you're listening to this and you're still listening to it, take a moment to really think about the question that I asked and think about the problem that I said I'm solving, and think for yourself about what do you long for? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you long for in your life? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to tell anybody the answer. So, feel free to be honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, what is it that you long for? And then ask this question: what might you have to risk in order to pursue it? What might you have to risk in order to pursue it? And you'll be well on your way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That is great. And I want to make sure that people know about the Emotional Courage Project, which you're going to be running. And I will be posting the URL for you underneath in a blurb underneath this podcast. And again, Peter, thank you so much for spending time with us. This is truly enlightening. And hopefully we'll chat again somewhere down the road.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us on Optimal Instinct with Trish. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and if you really enjoy the content, leave us a well-appreciated review. If you are looking to create an environment that partners your desire for more profitable, more productive, and greater referability in client relationships, combined with sustained team morale, then I suggest you head over to clientvaluedemo.com to learn more about the C's value model. Talk soon.